Hey guys, Pete here. So this is going to be my episode 6 of Mr. Robot Season 1 recap and review. I mentioned in the last review that the whole Fernando Vera storyline was not really my favorite when I watched this at the first time, and this episode kind of revolves around him and his situation. So it definitely wasn't one of my favorite episodes when I first watched it, and it's still not one of my favorites out of them all, but it's really not as bad because of the way things resolve. The reason I didn't like it at first, and still don't much like it, is that it always seemed like there was just no way that it could work out. To me, it seemed like once Vera knew that he turned him in, he had the upper hand, especially once he had control of Shayla. So it just seemed like it was, Vera's a good character, he's interesting, and all of that. It was just that with him being in jail, it seemed like a real sidetrack from what Fsociety was trying to do. Now, in this episode, we see that he does just that. He has Shayla. We get to see the introduction in the very beginning where he has his henchmen show her sort of in the proof of life to Elliot. And Elliot gets a chance to apologize, if nothing else, for what happened. But then, the whole idea of breaking him out of jail seems a little far-fetched. And be that as it may, that's what ends up happening. And we see some interesting stuff and how they do it. It's not totally unbelievable, I guess. It just seems like sort of the kind of thing that you would have seen happen a lot in the real world if it was possible to do. So we see him work with Darlene, and we see that she makes a critical error due to the time frame. We see this interesting little scenario where he has her go and drop a bunch of thumb drives or USB drives around the corrections department, and someone picks them up, and that gives them a chance to get the exploit onto the system. But then she used a known exploit, I guess is the best way to describe that, and it was picked up by the anti-malware software that the prison ran. So, Elliot spends most of the episode with his back against the wall trying to figure out how to get Vera out, and he is able to pull it off by hacking a laptop in a police car, but then when everything's all said and done, Vera had killed Shayla anyways. That was tough. It was definitely tough. It was a well-acted scene when we see Elliot's reaction. We know that this is probably the last thing that kept him kind of in reality, I guess you could say. Shayla was the one positive influence in his life, and now he's pretty much, at the end of this, what you think is he's probably spiraling out of control. So that is something that needed to happen, I guess. It's something that we had to see happen in order for him to get moving in that direction, much in the same way the data dump was. When you think about it after the fact, she kind of had to die. What would she be able to bring to the story beyond that point? Would they have had a relationship? Would it have turned into something? For the trajectory that he's on with this hack that he's trying to pull off with Fsociety, she doesn't really fit into the picture beyond that. I didn't realize that early on, but after seeing her dead, then I realized that, well, that's sort of the only way that could have ended. But I liked it when they were together. I liked her, and it was a good character. And if nothing else, it showed us that Elliot has some things that we might not realize otherwise. Like, he is capable of caring for someone and being affected on that level by someone. I guess you could say that it made him human in a way, because a lot of his interactions with us are very logical, very laid out in his thought process. So it gave him some balance, but it was really more important, I guess, to knock her off, to put him over the edge. So the main plot line didn't really move that much here because we sort of went off on this tangent, but there is a lot of foreshadowing of what's to come. Obviously we see as a result of the tragedy that Shayla actually knew more about what was the right thing to do than Elliot did. He went and did his thing, and it ended up being a terrible mistake. By trying to stop Vera, he ended up getting Shayla killed, and that was her concern, right? So at the end of the last episode, we saw that Angela had come across this idea that her father was in a lot of debt, even though Evil Corp wasn't responsible for killing her mother, basically. Now her father was in debt and had all these final notices and everything else for paying for her insurance. So she decides to dig through the data dump and starts contacting the lawyers that were involved in the original case that got thrown out. There's only one of them that call her back. She gets excited, she goes down, but then the lawyer kind of puts her in her place. We get a little look into what's up with this lawyer. She's drinking with her morning tea. I mean, it's early in the morning. We know that because we saw Angela's time on her computer. So I guess that opens the door where the other ones hadn't. But she says it took her 8 years to get her career back on track after that case got thrown out. She shows Angela just how difficult this is going to be. She shows her this guy who's been twice convicted of sexual assault sitting in the hallway. Tells her the situation where he had assaulted his pregnant girlfriend with an Xbox because when they were playing, something happened, something trivial happened. And she says to Angela point blank, I will have an easier time defending him than going up against Evil Corp. This isn't a big surprise to us as viewers, but it does sort of underscore just how massive and dangerous Evil Corp is. It's the largest conglomerate in history, according to the lawyer. So, it's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. Sure, they have this information from Colby, but when we see Angela go visit him, she's not even able to initiate any kind of talks because that's just how the kind of guy he is. Angela does go and meet Elliot quickly, and this is right in the middle of when he's trying to figure out how to hack the prison. And she says something that's pretty interesting. She says, we always knew what Evil Corp did. We didn't have the proof, but we knew. I have an idea that will change the world. I know it sounds really stupid, but I know how to do it. I think it could actually work. And this is a direct callback to Elliot telling us that he's trying to change the world and why that's, not to be mad at him for his slip. Elliot doesn't really have time to deal with it, so he just tells her to do what she thinks is right. And we see that they're on similar paths, but in two different ways. Elliot's trying to bring Evil Corp down by the hacking them, and she's trying to do it through the legal system. We get Tyrell and Scott Knowles. We find out that Tyrell's little walking into the bathroom thing with Sharon Knowles has backfired on him. He goes to see Scott, and Scott pretty much owns him, berates him. We see Tyrell at home later freaking out. Although Joanna is pretty cool and collected, she's having herself a snack and doesn't seem to feel the urgency that her husband does. But they are in a compromised position now. Tyrell was the interim CTO, and Scott Knowles is now going to take over his job. So he's going to be Tyrell's boss, and none of what he's done to this point is going to be good for him. The actor who plays Knowles is quite good, and you'll see that more, and it's a pretty powerful scene. It's pretty good. It knocks Tyrell down. But I think of the two, the more interesting one is Joanna's reaction and the scene at home. We see what a team they are and how they complement each other. The thing about the Scott Knowles thing that I remember that stood out to me at this point is that you realize that he kind of was introduced as a goof almost with his wine and all that. They kind of just didn't really pay him a lot of respect. He didn't become the CTO of the largest conglomerate in history by not knowing how to play the game. So that's really the big takeaway there. I had asked a couple episodes back in the reviews or the recaps that if you guys are starting to wonder about whether things are real or not. And I did. When I watched this the first time, I wondered about the Shayla scene. We find out she's dead, but they're really not away from Elliot at any point after that. So I kind of wondered if that whole thing was imagined, his conversation with Shayla. They've certainly left the door open for Vera returning and causing problems, but he's, for the most part, I would say that they pretty much tied up that whole storyline with a nice bow. Angela and Tyrell are the two interesting things that pop out of this. Tyrell is, like I said, he's in a compromised position, and Scott basically showed him that he owns his position there. So, that makes you wonder how he's going to react. And Angela was able to talk her way in with the lawyer, and the information is good, but they're probably going to need a lot more to be able to actually move the case forward. So that's about it for this episode. It is a middle-of-the-road one for me, although obviously the heart-wrenching death of Shayla is important. And even though we haven't seen anything move forward with Fsociety, We've definitely seen some things going with Angela having a similar motivation now that she's trying to take on E Corp herself. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We're really getting close now to season 3, so I'm getting pretty pumped up. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing weekly videos for Mr. Robot all through season 3. Make sure you turn on notifications so you see the videos when they come out. Follow me on Twitter and my other social media accounts so that we can get together over there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.